Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Welcome back to the Wobble Enjoy Sports channel. If you're new around here, hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. But if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continued support. This past weekend, I got 3 correct tips out of 5, still sitting at about the 60% mark. State of Origin, both men's and women's, this Wednesday and Thursday night. And then it's pretty much a full round of rugby league returning this weekend for round 17. So without further ado, let's get stuck straight in to the Ace High Tips show. State of Origin game number 2 in the men's is happening this Wednesday, tomorrow night, in fact, from Suncorp Stadium, Queensland. Their second home game in a row, technically, are hosting the New South Wales Blues from the Cauldron Suncorp Stadium on tab.com.au. The Maroons are favourites at $1.46. New South Wales are $2 out at $2.80 outsiders, and the line is at 6.5. Going into the team list news now for the Blues team. First up, the away side. Tedesco remains in at fullback. The wingers are Brian To'o and the Fox. Crichton and Turbo are the centres. Latrell Mitchell succumbing to the calf injury. The halves pairing is Jerome Luai and Mitchell Moses. The forward pack sees Paulo, Cook and Haas. Back row, Frizzell, Young and Yo. The interchange bench reads Uto Ikamanu, who makes his debut, Cameron Murray and Liam Martin, and Reece Robson in jersey number 17 makes his debut for the New South Wales Blues. And in at 18th man at the moment is Matt Burton. So the outs for New South Wales, obviously Nathan Cleary is out, Tavita Pengai Jr., Api Coruscant either injured or dropped, and so too Nico Hines, unfortunately. A lot of controversy surrounding Brad Fittler and his team selections, and some are saying that if he loses this game, even if he also gets a victory in game number 3, even if he loses game number 2, it might be curtains on his Origin career, possibly. Going into the home team now, that is Queensland. In at fullback, Reece Walsh. The wingers, Coates, Taulagi, Holmes and Hammer are the centres, and Munster and DCE are the halves pairing, and DCE is the captain. Collins and Fa'asuamala-Aui are the front rowers, with Ben Hunt starting in the hooker position, and then the back row is Fafita, Nene and Carrigan. The interchange reads Grant, Flegler, Cotter and Mawaki Fodawaker. I think that is well-deserved, Fodawaker. I think he's been really strong for the Gold Coast Titans this year, and I think that is a richly deserved Origin jersey. And AJ Brimson has pinched 18th man for the Maroons side. Last game, it was Tom Dearden, and therefore he was allowed to play for the North Queensland Cowboys against the Penrith Panthers on Friday night. He was very important, and it sort of makes me think, well, how well could we have gone against Parramatta when we lost our Origin players and Dearden was chosen to be 18th man? So could he have made a difference? Possibly. But the outs for Queensland are Selwyn Cobbo is not playing, so Coates is coming for Cobbo, but Cotter did start in the prop position in the last game, but he is coming off the bench in this one. And the other ones are through injury is Tom Gilbert and Jai Arrow. They have succumbed to injury, and it's Fodawaker and Nene that comes in for both of those players. I'm going to tip Maroons. I'm not going to go 13 plus. I got this feeling about the New South Wales Blues tomorrow night. I cannot wait to be there in person. It's my first Origin at Suncorp Stadium, my first Origin in I think 15 years or so. But I'm going to tip the Queensland Maroons side. They're a lot more settled. That's simply what it comes down to. It's what I said in my last game or in the last tip for game 1, and I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to go the Queensland Maroons to win this game 1-12. And in the second and final Women's State of Origin match for 2023, the Maroons host the Sky Blues up at Queensland Country Bank Stadium on tab.com.au. The Maroons are favourites at $1.72, and the Sky Blues are $2.15 outsiders. Going into the home side now, the Queensland Maroons, Tamika Upton retains her position at fullback. The wingers are Emily Bass and China Polata makes her origin debut this weekend. Shanae Suzuka and Ivania Polete are the centres, and the halves pairing is Tamara and Aiken. The forward pack is Marto, Brill, and woman of the match in game number 1, Keely Joseph, sorry. And then in the back row, Tasman Gray, Romy Teitzel starts this time with jersey number 12, not coming off the bench, and captain Ali Brinkman-Shaw in the lock position. Emma Manselman in jersey number 14 coming off the bench. Jessica Elliston, Sophie Hollyman, and Shania Power. The only true swap out in this game is China Palata has come in for Julia Robinson, who has been suspended for a raised elbow. But let's go into the Sky Blues because that lady, let's just start off there. The woman who copped the elbow, raised elbow forearm from Julia Robinson has been named in Isabel Kelly, which is great. There were concerns about her being out with an atrophy fetus sort of like injury there, or maybe a jaw fracture, but no, she's there, and she's the captain as well in the centres, and she is partnered by, of course, her mate Jessica Sergis. Emma Tonegado retains the fullback position. So does Jamie Chapman on one edge, but the late exclusion in game number 1, Tiana Penatani, she comes in jersey number 5, and she is taking over from Talia Fuime Ono, who was playing in the centres. Sergis got shifted out to the wings, and therefore Rachel Pearson was the lady that came in, but she's actually been dropped in this game, or maybe it's an injury, I apologise, but she's not playing in this game as halfback. So Talia Fuime Ono is the 5'8", Jessie Southwell is the halfback. The forward pack, Kezzy Apps, Millie Boyle, and Keely Davis. That's probably the more preferred starting front rower pair. That is not what happened in game number 1. The back row, Kernick, Clydesdale, and Samaima Taufa. She did not play in game number 1. That is a massive, massive inclusion. Jersey number 14, Quincy Dodd. She was jersey 19 in the previous contest. She's now jersey 14, so she had herself a really good account. She had a good account of herself in game number 1 for sure. Jersey 15, Kennedy Charrington, one of the better players for the Sky Blues in game number 1. Sarah Takatuki. Don't know how. I think she copped a fine, but she uplifted a Maroons player in game number 1, and I thought, right, well, that's it for you out of game number 2, but there you go. Shaylee Benson, jersey number 17, and the 18th woman for both sides, Talisha Harden in jersey 18, and Casey Tohi Hiku in jersey number 18 for the Sky Blues. The big overriding story or the reaction from game number 1 was the completion rates. And yeah, I was a bit critical of it, and it did go over my head a little bit because there were a number of players there that hadn't played in a month, maybe 2. So they were knocking off the cobwebs, and it's just, they raised the standard so well in 2022 that it was like, whoa, they're not holding on to the pill at friggin' all. But I'm so excited for this game. This is going to be a lot better quality of a contest. New South Wales, they need to win by 9 points in order to retain the shield. If they win and only win by 8, Queensland win the series for 2023. Tiana Penatani, Samaima Taufa, a more settled lineup, fingers crossed, touch wood for him on game day as well, sees the Sky Blues as a much tougher opposition, but they just looks they once they controlled the pill, they ended up controlling the pill maybe 6 more sets of 6 than the Sky Blues did the Maroons in game number 1. It's a testament to the composure that they showed. I do think that they did look the better the entire game, but it's a lot more settled. Rachel Pearson unfortunately misses out. I'm a massive fan of Rachel Pearson, but Talia Fuimaono and Jesse Southwell, it's definitely not two halfbacks trying to sort out how to play 5'8" and halfback sort of thing. It's going to be a pure Talia Fuimaono playing 5'8", a pure 5'8" role, and then the halfback position is going to be Jessie Southwell, who we know how well she went for the Newcastle Knights last season. I'm going to tip the Maroons, but I think this is going to be a fantastic game up in Townsville. Round number 17 of the 2023 NRL season starts on Friday night. There is only one game happening, and it's emanating from WIN Stadium in Wollongong. St George Illawarra Dragons host the New Zealand Warriors from WIN Stadium, and on tab.com.au, Dragons are $2.60 outsiders, whereas the New Zealand Warriors are $1.50. That is, boy howdy, that's probably as big a favourite the Warriors have ever been when they've travelled to Wollongong. And let me tell you friggin' why. The New Zealand Warriors have travelled to Wollongong 11 times in their history, and it was only in 2018 that they got their first ever win at Wollongong. This is their first trip since that day in 2018. And the Dragons, they've been a bit of a bogey side for the Warriors over the past few years. Warriors are on a 3-game losing streak to the Dragons. They have not beaten the Red V since 2021. The overall record, though, again, is in favour of the Dragons. This will be the 35th meeting this Friday night, and it's 24 wins to the Dragons, 10 wins to the New Zealand Warriors. And 7 of the past 8 encounters have been decided by 1 to 12. 3 of the past 4 have been decided by 6 points or under. Going into the team list news now, starting with the St George Illawarra Dragons, Sloane, Fengai, Sully, Lomax, Ravalawa, Jaden Sullivan has been named in at 5'8", and named at halfback is Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt has been named. Obviously, things can change. I can't even believe that he's been named, just quietly. The forward pack, Molo, Little, Lowry, Jack Bird returns, Jaden Sewer, and Jack DeBellin also returns as well. So the forward pack does look stronger, boosted by the return of Bird and DeBellin. The interchange reads on Monet, Molo, Murdoch Masilla, and Zane Musgrove with Jaden Hunt in a jersey number 18. The New Zealand Warriors coming off a bye after they belted the Canberra Raiders at GIO Stadium, Jared Croker's 300th game. They're going to be a really good watch for the rest of the season now. They're going to be so fascinating to see. So CNK is fullback. DWZ Montoya are the wingers. Berry and Pompey are the centres. Metcalf and Johnson are the halves pairing. The forward pack, AFB, Afoa and Egan. The back row is Ford, Niakure and Tohu Harris. The interchange, Dylan Walker returns after an injury. Jersey number 14, Curran, Sirinen and Tom Arley is jersey number 17. He rounds out the bench. And just looking at the rest of the reserves list now, Freddie Lussick has been named in a jersey number 18. So the likes of a Tamare Martin is still maybe a week or 2 away. The Dragons, they are just as much of a basket case club as the West Tigers at the moment, and probably even more so, because the West Tigers seemed to have at least got a handle on the friggin' ship just quietly. And New Zealand Warriors, they are just completely different. They are so good to watch. I can't wax any more lyrical about them in 2023. I'm going to do it. I think the New Zealand Warriors defense will just be way too classy. They are just such a classy outfit. The Warriors are going to win this game 13 plus, especially if Ben Hunt doesn't play this Friday night. Super Saturday, there are three contests, and the first game is the first ever meeting between the Dolphins and the Parramatta Eels, and it is coming to us from Sunshine Coast Stadium. Kickoff at 3 o'clock on tab.com.au. The Parramatta Eels are the favourites at $1.44, whereas the Dolphins are $2.80 outsiders. The Dolphins coming off the bye, the Parramatta Eels doing things pretty comfortably in the end, even though they were without Dylan Brown and the controversy around that situation. Mitch Moses was out as well, so too Junior Paulo. They still got the job done, albeit against a half-strength Manly Seagulls, but really well. Really, really, really well. So the Parramatta Eels have all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, got themselves into the top 8 with a for and against of plus 100 plus. It's just they've come from friggin' nowhere. So going into the Dolphins lineup, and remember, Origin may affect these team lineups. Hammer has been named in at fullback position. I reckon he will play. Azarko and Braden McGrady makes his first grade debut on the wing. And look, just instantly, because these are fresh reactions that I give to team list announcements, Team List Tuesday. Rugby League Guru came out this morning and said Braden McGrady, the son of Ewan McGrady, who played for the Bulldogs in the early 90s, late 80s, Rothman medalist as well. This is his son, and he's making his first grade debut. So thank you, Rugby League Guru. You were on it, man. You were absolutely on it. Valence Tavare is in the centres, and so too is Ewan Atkins. So Brenko Lee has succumbed to an injury. Cody Nikarima and Isaiah Katoa are the halves pairing. The forward pack is Bromwich, JMK and SASA. The back row is Kofusi, Bromwich and Ray Stone. The interchange is Josh Kerr from the Dragons, mid-season transfer. Hoping Ben Hunt would be hoping he'd be getting a mid-season transfer, but obviously not to be. Mark Nichols, Connolly Lemuelu comes off the bench this time, and young Max Plath in jersey 17 will be coming off the bench. And in jersey number 19 is Sean O'Sullivan. So he is that far away. I reckon he won't play this game. And maybe so. If Hammer if Wayne Bennett chooses Hammer to rest up, you'd probably put Cody Nikarima back at fullback, and then at a pinch, Sean O'Sullivan could come in. For the Parramatta Eels, Gutherson is at fullback, and he is having such a strong and underrated season, in my opinion. Sevo and Russell are the wingers. Penaseni and Simonson are the centres. Dejan friggin' Arcee, well done, young man, is the 5'8", and Mitch Moses is the halfback. The forward pack, RCG Paulo has been named. Brendan Hands and jersey number 9. Bryce Cartwright, Davey, and Hopgood are the back rowers. And then the interchange bench is Ogden, Offahengawe, Ryan Madison, and Makahisi Makatoa, with Wanga Blake and Sean Lane still named on the reserves list as well for the Parramatta Eels. They've come from nowhere. Again, I said before, the Parramatta Eels, and they're in really good touch. I tipped them to make the 8 just, but at the rate they're going, they could book themselves a home week 1 final at this rate, whether it be 5th or 6th position. They're going really well, man. And just a Wayne Bennett tip as well. Wayne Bennett is on a 4-game winning streak versus the Parramatta Eels, and that dates back to 2019, I think it was. But he is on a 4-game winning streak when it comes to the Parramatta Eels. It will be interesting to see if Mitchell Moses does back up. I've looked at this game all year long, and I've thought this is the one that the Parramatta Eels are going to drop to the Dolphins. This is going to be that usual Eels upset where they just lose control and they lose the game. The Dolphins, though, they look buggered. They look like that wall has finally crept up on them. And again, it depends if some Origin players do perform for the Dolphins this Saturday. And it is completely sold out. Sunshine Coast Stadium is completely sold out. So hoping for some good weather. Based on form, I'm going to go the Parramatta Eels And if I get kicked in the front again, fair dinkum, I'm going to be so upset. But I'm going to go the Parramatta Eels to win this game 1-12. Game number 2 on Super Saturday is from Bluebet Stadium. The Penrith Panthers host the Newcastle Knights. And on tab.com.au, the Panthers are favourites at $1.27. Newcastle Knights are $3.80. This is the 55th meeting between the two sides, and it's 26 wins to Penrith, 24 wins to Newcastle. There are 4 draws in there. And the last time these two sides played was earlier this season. The Newcastle Knights had arguably the best performance of their year, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. Penrith Panthers playing one of their worst games of 2023, and it was the boot of Nathan Cleary that scored a field goal in Golden Point extra time. But that didn't happen for him this past Friday night, just quietly. Going into the team list news now for the Penrith Panthers first up. Dylan Edwards is at fullback. Taruva and To'o has been named at wing. Tungo and Crichton too. Jerome Luai in at 5'8", and Jack Cogger at halfback. The forward pack, Leota, Kenny, JFH. Then the back row is Sorensen, Martin, and Yo. The interchange reads Luke, Smith, Lenu, and Salmon. And Zach Hosking has been named in at jersey number 18, which I know would surprise Jack and Nat at the Big Catchat podcast at the very least. Going into the Newcastle Knights team lineup now, Kalen Ponga is at fullback, Young, and Marzu. Marzu returns after he missed the bus last week. Gagai and Best are the centres. Gamble and Hastings are the halves pairing. Saifidi, Thompson, Crossland the front row. Frizzell, Lucas, and Adam Elliott are the back row. Kurt Mann, Jacob Saifidi, Jack Hetherington, and Matt Croker are the interchange benches. And Lockie Miller, again on the reserves bench in jersey number 20. Again, the Newcastle Knights, man, they were so disappointing last week. Not as disappointing as a Manly Seagulls outfit, but then again, they were by and large full strength. The Roosters are working at at half rate. And the Newcastle Knights bombed so many chances in that game. And it's even more disappointing when you know that the week before, they took the Brisbane Broncos all the way to the edge in a high-quality game of footy. A lot of people saying that the Broncos were crap in that game, their worst performance of the year. I don't think the Broncos were all that bad the week before against Newcastle. I thought it was an overall real high-quality game of footy, but doesn't hide the fact that last weekend against the Sydney Roosters at home, they buggered it in front of their home fans and lost to the Eastern Suburbs 18 points to 16. To add on to that too, the Knights haven't beaten Penrith since 2018, full stop. And that was at Bluebet Stadium, that victory came. Since 2014, Penrith have won 13 of 16 matches. Since 2014, Penrith have won 13 from 16 versus the Newcastle Knights, and one of those results being a draw. Again, Penrith Panthers 13 plus. The last game on Super Saturday is from Amy Park. Melbourne Storm host the Manly Warringah Seagulls, and the Storm are $1.29 favourites. The Seagulls are $3.60 on tab.com.au, depending on whether or not DCE and or Turbo and the like back up from Origin. $3.60 is huge on the Manly Seagulls, especially if the boys play. So there could be some really nice value about the Seagulls this weekend. This will be the 44th meeting between the two clubs. These two sides did meet earlier this season, and Manly put in arguably their best performance of the year. Downing Melbourne, they got under their skin and rattled the Storm by and large. And the Manly Seagulls, they last won in Melbourne in 2019. But before that, they were on about a 3-game winning streak there down at Melbourne between 2013, I think, to 2019-ish. Going into the team list news for the Melbourne Storm, Justin Olam is in at centre. Remus Smith in jersey number 3 as well. Warbrick and Coates are the wingers. Coates has been named. Nick Meaney at fullback. Munster and Hughes has been named. Eisenhuth and Welch has been named as the starting front rowers. Harry Grant in at hooker. The back row is Liero, Nelson Asafa Solomona, and Josh King in the back row. And the interchange is Garlic, Sims, Penne, and Wishart. And going into the Manly Seagulls lineup, KO Weeks has been named, so Turbo will 100%, there you go, will be rested in this contest. Saab and Tuapolotu are the wingers. The centres are Kohler and Garrick. Schuster and DCE are the halves pairing, and we'll see what happens with DCE. The forward pack is Paseka, Sipley, and then Croker. And then the back row is Olakawatu, Bullymore, and Kepi. The interchange is Lawton, Aloye, Woods, and Ben Condon. Tom Turbo has been named in jersey number 22, however, for the Manly Seagulls. Melbourne Storm, but not 13 plus. I think it'll be a bit closer than that, but yeah, Melbourne Storm will win this game. On Sunday, there are 3 games, and game number 1 is from Suncorp Stadium. The Broncos host the Gold Coast Titans on tab.com.au. Broncos are $1.34 favourites. The Titans are $3.30. This is the 35th meeting between the two sides in the Queensland Derby, and it's the Broncos that lead 24 wins to 10. Gold Coast last beat the Broncos in 2020 at Suncorp Stadium. That was their last win at Suncorp versus the Broncos in 2020. But pretty much for the past decade now, the Titans, they've got themselves 3 wins. In the past 2 years in a row, we've seen some of the most extraordinary first half games, and then the second half goes even more wilder. Like the scorelines have been like 40-20, or the scoreline has been 35-24, but it was the Titans that had a 24 points to nil lead, and then the Broncos flipped it around, man. So who the hell knows what's going to happen on Sunday afternoon footy? And just quickly, the Titans did win against the Parramatta Eels at Suncorp at Magic Round this year, but then the Dolphins came back and did what I just said. The Titans were up by record margin sort of thing, and the Dolphins came back and pipped them. So don't know what the hell's going to happen in this game, but I reckon it'll be pretty wild. So going into the team list news for the Brisbane Broncos, including Selwyn Cobbo, they've named us full strength 1-7. The forward pack, Flegler, Walters, Haas. The back row is Piakura, Jordan Ricky, and Patrick Carrigan. The interchange is Smoothie, Jensen, Hetherington, and Tapa'u. And in an 18th man is Jesse Arthurs. For the Gold Coast Titans, AJ Brimson has been named at fullback. Cam Pereira and Sami, the wingers. Kelly and Shup are the centres. Foran and Boyd are the halves pairing. For the forward pack is Fodawaker, Fa'asuamala Aui, and Sam Verrills in the front row. The back row, David Fafita returns after he was rested. And then the rest of the back row is Stimson and Liu. The interchange is Campbell, Clark, Jolliffe, and Haas. This could be a danger game for the Brisbane Broncos. It's halfway through the season. You've got the likes of a Reece Walsh backing up potentially from Origin. They could be hitting a wall, the Brisbane Broncos. I'm pretty sure they're coming off a bye as well, though, so you'd reckon they're rested up. So I think this is going to be a great game, but I'm going to go with the Brisbane Broncos to win this 1-12. And the final game of round 17 is from Allianz Stadium for Sunday twilight football. The Roosters host the Raiders. And on tab.com.au, the Roosters are the favourites at $1.67 and the Raiders are $2.20 outsiders. This is the 70th meeting between the Roosters and the Raiders, and the Roosters have 38 wins. The Raiders have 31 wins. This is the first trip to the new Allianz Stadium for the Canberra Raiders. And since the grand final, since the 2019 grand final, the wins are shared at 3 wins apiece. So 6 times they've played since that controversial night, and it's 3 apiece between the Roosters and the Raiders. Canberra last played the Roosters at Moore Park, or the SCG, in 2020, and they won that game in that famous semi-final match. But they haven't played the Roosters at the Sydney Football Stadium site since 2015. However, they haven't won at Allianz Stadium at the Sydney Football Stadium since 2011. So she's a bit of a graveyard for the Canberra Raiders. Let's go into the team list news for the Roosters to start off with. Tedesco, Tupou, Smith, Manu, Pauga, Kiri, and Sandon Smith. Fair dinkum. I'd be resting him anyway, just quietly. The forward pack, Waria Hargreaves, Turpin, Collins, Butcher, Tupanua, and Victor Radley returns for the Sydney Roosters. The interchange is Crichton, Brown, Butcher, and White. Drew Hutchison, Corey Allen, they're on the reserves list. And this is Angus Crichton's 150th game this Sunday. So kudos to Angus Crichton, man. Going into the team list news for the Canberra Raiders, Sebastian Kris is the fullback, Hopewade and Rapana, the wingers, Croker and Timoko, the centres, Whiten, Fogarty, the halves. Papali'i, Wolford, Tarpane, Young, Whitehead, Horsburgh has been named. Interchange is Starling, Gula, Kotrick, and Pasami Solo, and Arta Mariota and Xavier Savage have been named on the reserves list as well. The Raiders are coming off a bye, but they're also coming off the belting and embarrassing loss at home to the Warriors for Croker's 300th game. They've had a long layoff now, and the Raiders like to stir the pot against the eastern suburbs. It's not a rivalry, but there's still that history that's kind of recent between the two clubs, and the Raiders, I'm sure, would love to get one on top of the Roosters. But credit to the Roosters, they were working at half strength this past weekend, travelled to Newcastle and got the dub. But Radley returns. It's Crichton's 150th game. Tedesco could be playing in this contest as well. A stat for you is this is a match that pits the third last versus last teams in the NRL for those that produce line breaks. The Roosters are third last for line breaks. The Raiders are last for line breaks. There may not be many points on offer in this contest. Earlier this season, the Raiders' defense was great, but at home they've been pretty ordinary. And now they're traveling to Allianz Stadium to take on the Roosters, who finally sort of broke free a little bit with the victory over the Knights after a month from hell, pretty much. The Roosters defensively, though, are stronger, in my opinion. I think the Raiders are going to make this pretty hairy for the Roosters. But I just think the Roosters can do enough. I think the Roosters can do enough. But I mean, if Tedesco doesn't play and then Manu has to shift back to fullback, maybe it could be better for him. But I'm going to tip the Roosters to win this game 1-12. I think it will be a beauty, just quietly. Yo, that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much for choosing the Wobble and Draw Sports channel to have a listen in to the NRL tips for round 17 of the 2023 NRL season. This has been the Ace High Tip Show. And check out my live match preview with Ados the Great as the Rabbitohs host the Cowboys. That will be seen tonight, or if you choose to catch the replay, I'd very much appreciate that. I hope I can get you to like the content and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you very much. Take care and adios.